should be there.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, guys.
Hello. Just gonna wait a few more. It's not quite 6:30.
How's everybody doing?
Pretty good. You?
Talking, nobody can hear me. Hi.
Hey, Mar.
Hey, Matt. All right. All right.
I don't see some of our other working group.
Do you want to text them?
Or maybe just give them a few more minutes.
Okay.
I'm gonna grab water and be right back.
All right.
Bob, are you there? I just got a call that the link wasn't sent to some of our board members.
That's a Carter question.
Yes,
Oh, that's a Carter?
the link is on the website.
The link's on the website?
On the calendar.
All right.
Well, I can send it to anybody if you just.
Dr. Shirley wants it.
Okay, she had registered.
Yeah. Oh.
She should.
All right. Okay. Do we have all of our? No, not everyone's here. Should I wait a few more minutes because I don't see Akila? I don't see Katie. Okay. Let's just give it a few more minutes, like one more minute. See Katie. Okay, I'm gonna get started unless, Mar, do you wanna maybe text Akila?
I did.
You did? Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Patricia Laria, and Mark Fitzgerald, if you could wave, and myself are the co-chairs of the Equity Working Group, and we wanted to welcome you all to our first inaugural meeting. And I wanted to just have everyone introduce themselves that are on the working group. We can start with Matt. You want to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, my name is Matt Metzger. I live in Nolita. I've been on the board for 2 years. I'll come 1 year, coming up on 2 years.
Okay, thanks. Amy?
Did you say
Amy, go ahead.
I live south of Washington, where
Amy, you're breaking up something awful.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything.
Maybe turn off your video.
is that better?
Yes.
No.
No.
Try turning off your video. Let's try one more time. Just turn off your video and just use the audio.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Amy Brunna. I live just south of Union Square. I've been on the board for about 2 years, I guess. 2.5 years? 2 years. 2 years. And I'm excited to be on this working group.
Great. Sandy, you want to go next?
Oh, sure. I'm Sandy Russo. I live in the West Village, and I've been on the board for about, I think it's 10 years, 8 or 10 years.
Betty?
Hi, I'm Betty Kabovi Weiss. I live in Greenwich Village. I've been on the board for a couple of months.
Anthony?
Hi, Anthony Wong, a board member and treasurer of Community Board 2 and a resident of Chinatown, and I've been on the board for 10 years.
Akila?
Hi, this is Akila. I am on the community board too. I'm a newly appointed. I'm on the Schools and Education Committee, and I'm one of the founders of Free, and I'm really excited to be here. I am en route traveling, so hopefully my connection will continue. Nice to see everyone.
Katie?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Katie Bordenaro. I have no camera on my computer, so you can't see me, but I can see you. I've been on the community board for 7 years, and been on a lot of working groups and task forces over the time. But I think this is a really important special committee. So I'm very honored to be able to contribute.
Wonderful. And then over to you, Mark.
Matt?
Oh, Matt introduced himself.
Oh, he did? Sorry.
That forgettable?
I'm sorry. I think I was texting Akila at the time. All right. Hi, I'm Mar Fitzgerald. I'm still relatively new. Am I still new? I don't know. I'm on the community board. I currently sit on Schools and Education and SLA2 committees. And I'm co-chair with Patricia of the EWG, which is the Equity Working Group. And we are very proud and happy to be able to do this work.
And all right, Patricia Larry again, and I've been on the board for about 3 years, and I live in the West Village, and I'm also a founding member of Free and on the Schools and Eds committee as well. Welcome, everyone. So, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm also a founding member of Free as well. We asked our committee members for our inaugural meeting to bring with them 3 ideas, hopes, direction that they think or feel that this committee should be working on or things that we might be able to achieve. And so we're going to go right into it. Let's keep it as short as possible, and then we will have discussion of these ideas after everybody has had a chance to present their ideas. And I'm going to start with Matt.
Part of me doesn't want to go first. Is that okay?
Does anybody want to volunteer to go first?
I'll volunteer.
Fantastic.
I'll go after Sandy.
Okay. These are three areas that, come to mind, and it's not exclusive. There are obviously a million things we could do. But one of the issues that concerns me a lot, and I've been a very vocal opponent, is this ingrained culture that the board has that we must always work within a public-private partnership, especially around parks. And so we're never equals at the bargaining table. The powers that be hold much more sway than we do. And we're always in this negotiating posture. And why I think it ties into Black Lives Matter and the issues we're trying to address is that we bargain with developers and others on behalf of getting maybe senior housing or getting a minimum number of low cost or middle income housing. And we always come away from these negotiations with huge developers disappointed. We didn't get what we really want. It's not really all that beneficial to the community because the numbers are so low in terms of what we were able to squeeze out of a negotiation. And I feel that something has to change and that we have to be either not cooperate at all or figure out some way where we have a greater say in what goes on in our community. And even in those situations where developers agree, okay, we'll give you some senior center units in our 100+ unit building, and we'll give you some low income housing as well. Those units are often, I think always, never up to the standards that the rest of the building gets. They get smaller units, they get cheaper finishes and cheaper appliances, and most notably, they're placed in the least desirable sections of the building. Around the corner from me on Morton Street, I guess, no, Barrow, no, Morton, is a development where all these middle or low income units are in the basement. And people literally have to keep their shades closed all day if they want any kind of privacy, because as you walk by, their windows are at your feet. So that's one area. In a similar situation, I think we do the same thing with parks and public amenities. I'm totally opposed to these private entities that work with these parks, like the Hudson River Park and the Hudson River Park Friends and Central Park Conservancy and Washington Square Friends. These are sort of privately run funding arms for these parks. And it's always the big money goes to the big rich neighborhoods. And park funding in New York City is not equal, it's not fair. And the communities that need decent, friendly parks that are kept well are neighborhoods in Black communities, Latino communities, and other poor communities in the city. And the way the funding goes, often the funding is a partnership. So like with Hudson River Park, Barry Diller promised a gajillion dollars, and he designed an island pod thing that he wanted to add to Hudson River Park. And no one liked it. It was ugly, but he had all the money. And so we enter into this agreement with him that, that it can be And this is all on public property. But as a private developer, he holds an enormous amount of sway. So he gets the design he wants. He gets city or state funding to kind of match what he's put in, which I think is the problem. And then he also gets to hold some private events that he charges for, like concerts or whatever. So it's a similar thing. I hate it. I think it's destructive, and I think it sets up the inequities within our city perfectly. And the last and also similar issue I want to address are bids. These are business districts, but I don't even forget what it stands for. And they collect fees from commercial tenants within the bid area, like the NoHo bid or the West Village bid, and all the commercial properties have to contribute a certain sum. And it's not exactly private because the city, in fact, enforces those contributions. So if you have skipped contributing as an owner of a commercial space, that amount will be tacked onto your real estate tax bill. And it's the same kind of thing where in rich neighborhoods, they set up these bids and it's public-private kind of partnership that goes to enhance those wealthier neighborhoods. And again, it just builds on a disparity within the New York City community that is intolerable. And one other thing connected to bids, I'm sorry I'm going on so long, but is this affiliation with the Doe Fund or ACE, which somehow I think the Doe Fund works with recently incarcerated folks and gives them temporary housing and gives them these menial jobs where they wear these jumpsuits. They might as well still be in prison, cleaning up parks and sidewalks and public streets. I think all of those services should be funded by the city. And I think if maybe there are some more uplifting jobs and opportunities that these funds can give these predominantly men, I think, who are, recently coming out of prison situation. It seems completely demoralizing. It reminds me of chain gangs in the South. And most of the participants, if not all, are black men. And I think it's abhorrent. And I'd like to see that done away with. I'm done.
We call them returning citizens.
Oh, sorry.
That's the correct term right now. All right, so the next person is going to be Amy. And thank you, Sandy. Thank you, those were great.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So this equity working group came about because of all the activism that happened after George Floyd's death. But I believe that it should have been, something like this should have been instituted a long time ago. And I think that as a government entity, we may be small, but as a government entity, we should be looking at our processes and our structure, as all government entities are being asked to look at their processes and their structure. So I think that should be one of our earliest focuses. I can expand on any of these if you want, but I'm just going to tell you top line. I also think that it would be a great way to get the community involved if we looked at our neighborhood and our community in such a way as to correct white-centric historical descriptions of what went on here. And it could be signage, it could be monuments, it could be a walking tour. I don't know what it'll be, but I think that would be great to get community members involved, talking about what we should be talking about, what we should be, how we can correct that, and what we would do to do that. Because I hope this is going to be a working group where the community is very involved and their voices are heard. And then third, I would say, take a look at public safety within our community board. I understand that that should be under quality of life, maybe. I don't know, but maybe I can't expand on that, but I do think that we have a lot of tourists who come here, a lot of visitors from around New York City who come to our neighborhood, plus all the people who live here. And we should be exploring public safety, policing, those issues as well, and what's going on in our community.
Thank you, Amy.
Yes. Go ahead.
Katie, you're next, Katie.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. It's so interesting to see how people pick up your charge, you know, what the different approaches are. As a longtime educator in independent schools in New York City, I've sat on diversity committees at these places, and some of the most successful events, and were events when we had a common book that was read, and then everyone came together to discuss it. I remember reading Why Do All the Black Kids Sit Together in the Lunchroom, and we had the professors who wrote that come and talk to us about it, or seeing a film. I was just thinking when, you know, what we could do that has worked in other settings to bring people together to talk about the disparities, about institutional and systemic racism, and that everyone can get involved in and can key into on a meaningful level. And also, a lot of the independent schools in our neighborhood and around the city have directors of diversity. I know many of them personally, and I'd be happy to work on talking to them to see what kinds of things actually bring people together and help people talk about these grave issues and help them move to a productive consensus to address them. So those are the things that ran through my mind when I received this call to action.
Thank you, Katie.
I only had two. The third thing is, what is free? We have three founders of an organization, and I don't even know much about it. Is it FREE, like free, free, gratis, liberation? What is it? What is it? Please define it.
Thank you, Katie, for asking. I was too scared.
So, yeah,
Too embarrassed.
So FREE is actually an organization that, yes, we are founding members of, Akila, Patricia, and I, that does educational equity, specifically within District 2, which we are mostly, CB2 is mostly District 2. So,
yes,
you know, we do this equity work in many ways and are involved in many ways, but FREE, because we are all also mothers, is very close to our hearts as far as the equity work. But of course, we will address the educational equity as well. Akila, do you want to add to that?
I was just going to say that FREE stands for Families for Real Equity in Education. So that's the title is what we do and how we are, and really how we are dismantling policies and educational policies that have been put in place in District 2 that propagate segregation. So a lot of the work we do is dismantling policies that propagate the segregated schools in our district.
Can you put a link in the chat or something so that we can, do you have a web presence?
We do. Patricia, you want to do that?
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay.
That'd be great. I'd love to learn more. Thank you so much for sharing.
But yeah, I mean, like Akila said, just dismantling these systems that, you know, promote inequities in the schools. And that's really what this committee is about, tackling those things here within CB2. So let's hear next from Betty.
Yeah, I had a couple ideas that were like a bit more specific, as just sort of like smaller scale things that I thought we could do. I think that we have a lot of great libraries in our district that put on a lot of educational events for younger children. And I think anti-racism is an important thing to start instilling in children and educating in children from a young age. And so I think working with libraries in our communities in our community to encourage anti-racist story time or events that encourage diversity and an emphasis on anti-racism from an early age. Another thing that I think would be beneficial is encouraging community events, sort of like street fair-esque things that incorporate the diversity of our board, and that our board meaning, you know, the entire district, not the members that sit on our board specifically, but just having community-wide spaces for education and cultural appreciation, things like that. And then I think within our own board, I think it's important that the members look at that every decision or most relevant decisions are looked at through the lens of how they will impact minorities in our district, and that's something that's given special attention to, and that is made a priority when we're discussing decisions. And I don't think it really matters what committee they come to. All decisions could have an impact on minorities in our district. So those are just a couple of ideas that I had.
Fantastic. Thank you, Betty. Anthony?
Yes. Some idea. Well, the first thing is education for the board members themselves, in order to sort of acquaint themselves with the minority groups. Maybe either the board itself posts up or sends around resources so the rest of the the rest of the board members can get acquainted with sort of like those terms that you sent out. You know, intersectionality, you know, racism, some of these terms they might not be familiar with, you know, because they're pretty new. In terms of ethnic studies, they might not have taken it when they were in school. Or you could, I guess, reach out to maybe the borough president's office, and they could actually do maybe a workshop that's sort of once a year, twice a year. Like just today, they did a conflict of interest workshop, right? And land use that's going on. So make it mandatory for all board members to attend and know about people's histories. Second thing is in terms of accessibility for non-English speaking folks in the neighborhood, whether they be Chinese or Latino, Spanish speaking. I mean, our board website, you can translate it into other languages using the translate this page, so they can actually access information, but that's only if they are able to read the words translate this page from English, right? So maybe the website can be, you know, modified a little bit to be better. Like what they do on the DOE, they actually have sort of like those other characters underneath translate this page right now. So that's something we could do for our website. But I mean, in terms of attending meetings, that's really tough. If they do go, they won't understand what's going on unless they bring a translator. So, I mean, that's a bigger issue to think about, how to allow people to access meetings and what's going on back and forth. And then as Betty brought up, in terms of diversity, I mean, I've been on the board for 10 years now. And more recently, the board is now more diverse than 10 years ago. And but I guess we can push for more diversity, as well as diversity in age, not just race too. And that's my thoughts for now.
Great. Thank you so much, Anthony. Are you ready, Matt?
So it wasn't a ready thing. So this is, I will say one of the, I don't want it to count as one of the three, but I will say that I'm going to take the approach of probably talking as little as humanly possible, because I think one of the things that I'm hoping this committee will do is remind everybody on the board, everybody in the community, that we need to be better. People who look like me need to be better about knowing when to just sit down and listen and hear people out. And I want to do that a lot because I know you guys will lead us in the right direction. So my three are, I really want to look at the board, how the board interacts. I absolutely want to push for large scale, worldwide change, whether that means, whether that is at the state level, the city, whatever. But I hope that we can look very specifically at how we do what we do. So are we more likely to approve a liquor license for an Italian restaurant over an Ethiopian restaurant? Are for any of the permits? And I will say this, the NBA researched fouls and saw a racial disparity. Refs were informed about it. They changed the behavior. It went away. This isn't about people making bad choices. We just need to look at data. In my opinion, we need to look at data and see what we can do. And I don't want there to be feelings hurt. It would be my, it's not an attack on anybody. We're not attacking people. I want to look at how we can positively, or how we can encourage monuments to the history that isn't often told of this community. Because I feel like while we got the parks, is putting a plaque at the African burial site, that we can have more. Let's push for as much as we possibly can. And then I, like Amy, really want to discuss public safety. I promise not to hijack the conversation, but I think there should be a discussion about what our community expects from the police. Consent to govern, derived by the governed. We get an input on how we are policed and how the government interacts with us. And so I think we should voice that. Those are my three.
That's great. That's great. Carter, do you want to bring everybody forward, that other CB members that are here?
We didn't hear from Akila.
Oh, I forgot you, Akila. I'm sorry, it's because I can't see you. Akila, please share your ideas with us.
Thank you. Sorry, my connection is actually awful. I've been kicked off a bunch of times, so I hope that I don't lose you in the middle of talking. But I was really happy to hear all of the ideas that people are bringing forward. I've been very involved in recently, especially more now, but for really the past 8 or so years, in really addressing inequities in our education system and in the world in which my children live, in our community that we live in, Soho. And that's something that I have been doing through also working on doing events in the neighborhood, in the community, with a lot of people from CB2. I would love to see more education around implicit bias happening within our community board and in our larger community as well, and really starting to unpack some of the ways in which we can have better and deeper understanding within ourselves of how, systems of inequity continue, and really being able to help people begin to identify and understand when they're interacting in a system of inequity. So there's lots of, I mean, I can come up with more concrete ways to do that, but that's sort of like how I'm thinking one thing our group could be helping in our neighborhood and our community around all systems, around policing, around education, around, our different committees, even within the community board, really beginning to train our eyes and our ears to begin to really see how inequities are at play in our homes and in our communities. So I'd love to start sharpening our lenses for that. I don't know if that's, but thank you.
Thank you so much, Akila. These are great, you guys. These are all great ideas. we've heard from at least 3 of you that your concern is public safety and how we are policed and our relationships around policing. Also, our processes as a community board. Do we look at things through an equity lens? And if we don't, how do we do that? I think that one of you said data. Was it Anthony? I can't remember. Hold on. Data is really important. It was Matt. So unless we have the data, unless we can look at specifically, specifically in SLA, how do we award, how do we offer denials or approvals in our recommendations for licenses? What are the statistics there? What are the demographics there? We should look at that. And we should examine these things within all of our committees. Patricia?
Yes, I would agree with you there. I also liked what Anthony brought up about the education of our board members around the language that's being used, touted around. I even liked what he said about reaching out to the borough president, so that borough president's office, that all community board members have this training, and all the community boards, not just CB2. And I also, another one that I was thinking about is our bylaws, like looking at our bylaws and how we govern ourselves around the equity work. So those are the 3 that resonate with me, and we can discuss some more if you guys want to talk.
Well, I think, Carter, do you want to bring the rest of the board forward to contribute, or the public?
Yeah, we've got 10 other board members who are with us, so I'll bring them forward. And just, we have requested from the borough president's office several times to have them provide anti-bias training for all the community board members in Manhattan. And it's something that's happened over a couple of years, actually. It's not just recent. Bring everybody up here. It'll take me a second.
Yeah, the training is something that Patricia and I talked about. The anti-racist training, the implicit bias training is something that we would love to be able to offer to the entire board, to our committee specifically. I mean, I think that it's really important that all of us learn the language of equity work. That's part of the reason I sent out the glossary that I did before this meeting, so you guys could really acquaint yourself with some of the terms and concepts around equity and diversity and social justice. I see, we have some hands raised from the public, but first we're going to hear from any board members that would like to contribute ideas about equity in CB2. Do we have any? You guys can raise your hands. No? All right. Should we bring Samir forward, Carter?
I think you've got Janine has her hand raised.
Oh, there they are. Cormac and Janine. So Janine and then Cormac.
And it might take a second just for the board members to come on because they're all promoted at once.
Yeah. I'm just going to speak briefly because, as you can see, I'm in a public space and wearing a mask. I think the anti-bias and implicit bias training is really critical because that travels through everything, whether it's monuments or safety or anything else. I'm sorry, I'm in a loud place. And I just, I'm going to go back and mute myself and just listen. Thank you.
Cormac. Thank you, Janine.
Hi, yeah, so, I mean, I just had a couple of thoughts I wanted to share with folks. And one is the talk about the police. I would just think about expanding that more broadly. It does seem to me that as a community board, we have a responsibility to our community to push back on the government and the city and state in all agencies and aspects to the extent that they are operating in biased manners here, or that they're not doing their own work on anti-racism. So I would just expand it, you know, as well, and not limit ourselves to law enforcement. I'm not saying don't do law enforcement. I'm saying, and then the also with the, it seems to me we have a role to play with a lot of the institutions in the in the district. So the community is not just a community board, right, and how we act. In fact, it's mostly not us. But there are a lot of longtime institutions in the district, nonprofits, arts institutions, educational institutions, and businesses, for-profit businesses. And we really ought to be, we ought to be working to educate and advocate with them to really do the kind of anti-racism work internally and to rethink the way that they do business some. And then finally, and Matt, I think, touched on this a little bit in his comments, is, so many of our problems grow out of privileges that are the result of historical inequities. And a lot of the challenge of this work and the challenges that we face as a society has to do with the stories that we tell ourselves about things and about what happened. It seems to me the first duty of equity work, and the first duty we all have, is to tell the truth and to look at the truth about what's actually happening out there, what the real truth is in people's lives, and what has happened in the past. And our neighborhood thrives on historical tourism, right? And this romantic narratives of the past that we have here. And the narrative that we all tell each other all the time, even in community board meetings and hearings and things, and the one that's going out to tourists out there, is one that really leaves out an awful lot of what happened here, and brushes by an awful lot of people whose contributions have been left out because of the color of their skin or their gender or some other way they didn't fit in. And so I would be very pleased to work with anybody on, trying to think about how we use the village, as it were, and all the people come to the village to tell a fuller story about the village and maybe have people leave with a broader view of history. So.
Thank you so much, Cormac. Dr. Shirley?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I thank you. Well, I've been listening to everyone's comments, and it's interesting how like minds, we're all sort of thinking alike. I've been talking privately, though, to Pat about some of my thoughts. Quite a few of them have been mentioned already. The village is known basically for being people who live here, who come here, are, quote, progressive or liberal. But I have found that people, there are varying degrees of liberalism among people. And also, people are very quick to say, I am not a racist. You know, my wife is black, my girlfriend is black, I work with people who are black, my best friend is black. So we want to think, I think we need to start first with ourselves. The implicit bias is definitely a place to start. We all have biases. And I even mentioned to Pat the idea of developing a reading list. And I have given her, and I will give her some sources that people can kind of read. I've spoken to Carter about the idea of trying to see if about the training for implicit bias that maybe the board president can also offer. And I noticed that we had Anthony mention that as well. What else did I want to say? Yeah, so I think we need to start with ourselves first, and to then we'll be able to understand and ourselves and how we interact with each other and with others. So I think that's a good place to start. I think also too, some of you, and I guess maybe it depends on whether you're interested or not, I might really not think about it, because a lot of you have been, you've had, privileges that your race is a construct, really, that your whiteness has afforded you. And you might not even be aware of some of the things even that you do, that you say, that really can be interpreted as you're not being sensitive or not really knowing enough about it. So I think the reading, the implicit bias, definitely we can all find out about ourselves. We all have biases, but also in reading about the history, if you don't know it, of really racism in this country and how it started. The whole idea of race is a construct. There's no such thing as race as it relates, it's only if it's based on skin color. So I won't keep talking because a lot of the things we've said already have been said, but I am coming from having lived in this neighborhood for over a century, coming to New York University from the South, never having lived in New York before, growing up although coming from upper middle class, coming to this particular town, and down South, we know racism because it's very evident. In fact, there's a saying, white people down South don't care where Black people, they don't care how big they get, they just don't want them to get too close. And of course, we say in New York and in other places, white people don't care how big you get as long as you don't get too close. And then of course, they don't care how close you get as long as you don't get too big. But anyway, so I'm looking at it, I'm excited about this committee. I think it's long overdue. And for many of you know, I happen to have been actually on the board a very long time, being the only Black person who was an elected member of the board. Having experience in the board, and some of you who've been around a long time as I have, also know my personal experience of a very serious racist act by a community CB2 member. And so I have seen it up close. I've seen it very personally. And I think that this is a very good start. I think what we'll have to do, though, is not this kind of work. And you talk about equity work, people talk about racist, anti-racist things. I think we do need to look at those terms and have a better understanding of them. I think we ought to also have some kind of knowledge of how this whole racist thing evolved, and then roll up our sleeves and be very, very serious about it. It is not easy work. We know for a long time we would not be in this situation if we had tackled this race thing early on. And so I think now is better than late, but now is better than ever. So I'm perfectly excited about it. I'm willing to do anything that I can to advance this, and of course, so that we can all live the way our Constitution says. everybody should be able to live in this country, free to do all the things that the Constitution grants us to have: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Thank you, Dr. Shirley.
Thank you, Dr. Shirley. I'm not sure they were thinking about us when they wrote that, but yes, theoretically it should apply to us.
Well, just know though, I was part of, when I was in college, I was part of the civil rights, the marches for protesting for civil rights. So look, we have come a very long way. So we want to also think in terms of the things that we've accomplished, but of course there's much more work to be done.
Absolutely, absolutely. Valerie?
Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting this meeting. I just wanted to add that, you know, today is June 30th and tomorrow is July 1st, which means a new fiscal year starts, which means we then start working on fiscal year 2022 budget. So I'd really like to see the equity lens on our district needs statement, as well as on our budget priorities list, which I know are capital expenses. But I'd just like to see the work of this committee be seen in that work as well. And as far as the glossary, I'd love to know if you're going to be sharing that with at least the exec committee and or the committee chairs, and just how that would be rolled out. Thank you.
I can actually drop that in the chat right now, and then we will send it to the exec community as well. If that is all from, and thank you, Valerie. Those were great points, actually very important. Let's hear from Samir, one of our attendees.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks, Samir. I'd like to thank you for your letter, by the way. We really appreciated it. So thank you very much.
Oh, I'm glad that you got it. And sorry for raising my hand so early. I wasn't sure if there would be public comment or not. So one thing that to be very specific, one thing I would encourage your group look at is something called the progressive stack. I don't know how many people have heard of it, but basically it's the idea that democracies are traditionally, you know, the majority get to hog a lot of the room, a lot of the air. The idea with progressive stack is you flip that on its head and you actually explicitly give people who are in minority groups the chance to speak first. And so that way you get to, you know, hear more diverse voices instead of just the regular old, in my experience, community board specifically, the older, whiter voices. It's especially important for meetings where the public comment is limited. So I was in a community board meeting a few days ago that only had 45 minutes of public comment. And so I think I was the first person with a non-white name to speak after maybe like 10 or so whiter sounding names. So if we were to flip that on its head, that would help a lot in that case to get more diverse voices. And I just wanted to call out specifically what Matt said. I think that it was super astute and important that the people who historically have had the larger voices and the take on more space, take a step back and really listen to the people who haven't, and progressive stack would also help with that as well. Thank you. I'll email some additional thoughts, but that's the high level bit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Samir. That is actually a big part of this work, that we have to put people of color, specifically Black people, forward in this conversation, and also to be a true ally. The first and biggest and most important part is to listen to those most affected, those who have been marginalized and disenfranchised, because they know best how it feels and have a lot to contribute on how to heal these problems. So now
Lois has her hand up. Lois?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much for recognizing me. I just want to, I have several points. They're not in any order, but one of them is the accessibility for the physically challenged and for parents that have strollers and older people, or not necessarily older, more injured people that have rollators that do not have accessibility into stores, into restaurants, into bars, and very specifically, and several of you are mothers or grandmas, getting into the Jefferson Market Library was very difficult. I know they're amending it and they're working on it, but for years, you couldn't bring your carriage or your stroller into the children's room up those big stairs, especially if your child was sleeping or you had 3 children in tow. And when I was trying to bring my grandchildren into the library about a year ago, I tried to use the handicap access elevator and I was told that I was not allowed to do that. Okay, so that's about equity. In terms of, I'm a supporter of the Hendrick Martin Institute, and I feel that we should encourage, and this should be on the reading list, and this should be encouraged at our library, that I know in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the library, they have trans reading storybooks, not necessarily about gay or straight, just a transgender reading a book to the kids, for the kids to get used to seeing a person who is transgender, whether they're in a mixed costume or not, or just wearing civilian clothes. And then the third thing that I would like to say, I think it's the third, is that I encourage everyone to go to the 6th Precinct Community Council. And I know we all have meetings, and we might even have meetings when it meets. I think it meets on the last Wednesday of every month, starting in September. And actually go there and voice our opinion or your individual opinion, because you are confronted the police. And on that vein, I would like to know why the police pepper sprayed our protesters at Washington Square Park, and why they pepper sprayed them. For what reason was the goal? And pepper spray is a weapon. That's what I have to say. Did you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Lois.
Lois.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lois. So we have another attendee with a hand raised. Pete Davies.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you for joining us, Pete.
Thank you for having this get together. I just wanted to raise some general things that might be of use, and that's the control of capital in the neighborhood, in the area, in the district. And that would be looking at the massive, large entities that control the property, Trinity, NYU, and how that impacts equity and access within the community. And you also might look at the way banks operate within the community. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Thank you.
Great points. Thank you. Thank you. Patricia, I think at this time we can start discussion within the committee. Maybe hone in on 3 issues now that everybody's heard from all of the other committee members and board members and the public. maybe they have a more concrete idea of maybe what first steps could be for us. Actually, we have one more comment from the public, from John Mills Pierre. Mr. Mills Pierre?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Hi.
Hi, my name is John Mills Pierre. I'm a resident in CB2. I live on Sullivan Street. I happen to be a Black man and a business owner here. And it's, first off, thank you for putting this together. I think this is wonderful in hearing the points. My situation, and I can only speak for myself, is one of complete implicit bias. I think it really merits us looking at the value in which we place on those who are able to come to meetings. I think Anthony said it best, diversity in age and race. I think there are issues, and I can only speak specifically to the SLA and the quality of life committees. That's where I have had experience over the last 12 years. And if we look at what happened with Miss Lily's in 2011, if we look at what happened to my own bar in 2015, and if we look at what's happening to a bar called Hazia, which is a Hispanic-owned bar, that's happening right now as we speak, there seems to be an understanding that white middle-class voices are more important than the entire community. And quite frankly, they're the ones who are able to attend these meetings. For me to even know that this meeting was happening required a lot of work and effort. And I've been listening to this for over an hour. This in of itself speaks to an issue. We were not heard because we don't have access, and this takes a lot of time and energy. And for a marginalized person of color, you're already running up against other factors, and now I have to sit through a call for an hour and a half and hear privileged white people speak about what their issues are before I'm even heard. And I know that sounds harsh, and I don't mean it personally against you all. I just think it speaks to the overall frustration that one faces when they actually attend these committee meetings. That said, something has to change with it. We cannot allow, if you look specifically again at the SLA committee, the way the process is structured, you already have to make the investment in the space. That in of itself requires a commitment. And then at that point, you're able to confront the community board and seek a license. So at that point, you're already financially invested, and you have no wherewithal to understand what is actually happening on the other side. The process is such that you should get signatures in place. Those are your rules. That is what the business owners do. But then come to find, you come to a meeting and you should know that you should arm yourself with an army of folks to speak on your behalf. And in those cases, I've sat in several meetings where there have been 4 or 5 squawking voices, usually white, older, privileged people. And then there's letters of support on the other side, and they get ignored, as if those voices are more valuable than the voices that have actually spoken or have written their consent for something to happen. And it goes back to Anthony Wong's point about diversity in age and race. How can you tell me that a community board that is made up of 73% single people? Do you realize the 2010 census for CB2, 73% of our inhabitants are single, and 59% of them are between the age of 21 and 59. So of course they want outlets, they want to socialize. So I don't understand why we constantly beat down these restaurants. And on top of that, if you look at the component of most of these restaurants, they usually have an ethnic flavor to bring something different to the table. Most of them English is not their native language, and they don't have the funds to pay an attorney to sit before them. And yes, I know they're the Soho Grands of the world in these large chains, but really we have to look at the implicit bias on that front. And I am a direct victim of it. And now my establishment is closing its doors on July 31st because I was deprived of economic opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mills Pierre. And I am so sorry to hear about your business. we will absolutely follow up with you. We want to hear more of your story. And I want you to know that you're heard and you will be heard further by us.
Yeah.
Thank you. You all have my email.
Yes.
It's millspierre@icloud.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Matt.
Can I ask Mr. Mills-Pierre a question?
Sure.
You discussed a restaurant where something is happening to it currently, and while I want to hear the other stories, that one story I wouldn't mind having you tell me for us right now.
So a bar restaurant immediately next door to me started the process in late 2019. There are three families, we'll call it. I'll be as respectful of everyone's privacy as possible. 3 families on the block that do not want any liquor establishments on a block that is entirely commercial at the ground level, where also every restaurant and or retail space is under 500 square feet. So we're not exactly talking about a large nightclub here, and it's a restaurant. So speaking of implicit bias, these are the same 3 families have constantly gone to Carter and Bob Ely and Cormac with their complaints about everything that's happening on the block. And so information is passed on to them and not the general public. In perfect example, there was an email sent out to one family by a Bob Ely that was actually forwarded to me to actually vote against and write letters with a deadline of 1 day to the State Liquor Authority because they were bypassing the Community Board 2 because the Community Board 2 denied them. So that email came to me, and it was basically asking for all of those who are opposed to this to please write a letter into the State Liquor Authority. That information was not given to everybody who presented at the community board, both the people who were pro or against. That information was given to those who were against it. And those who were against it happened to be 3 very specific white people on the block who do not want any liquor establishments. That was not given to everyone else, and they don't speak for the entire neighborhood. But they are constantly given information and insider tips on how to actually prevent something. So they met, I believe the meeting was last Wednesday, at the State Liquor Authority was going to hear this restaurant for their state level request. And they were once again denied because, of course, those 3 families were armed with the appropriate information to submit the actual letters against it. How can anyone possibly win in this situation? And I'm saying this knowing full well that that person operating next to me is direct competition to me. It's not in my best interest for someone else to receive a liquor license on the block or have a competing restaurant. But it is my duty as a citizen and as a resident on that block and a homeowner on that block to ensure that we don't have empty storefronts, and try my very best to do that. So I actually managed to get a letter in, but it didn't matter. I was the only one. And he happens to be, his native language is Spanish. He's Spanish speaking. So he's at a major disadvantage in terms of how this is handled. And it's a complete, it's implicit, that's actually direct bias. And it's appalling and it's disgusting. And this happens on a regular basis when we're actually confronted with this, because the reality is, guess what? Only 2% of businesses in all of New York City are actually Black owned, and I happen to be one of them. So we might as well make it 1.7% come July 31st.
All right. Dr. Shirley has her hand up. Dr. Shirley?
Actually, I think it might be in the best interest, maybe Mar and Pat, if I can make a suggestion, that you speak with Mr. Mills-Pierre and get more details about what happened.
That is absolutely our next step. Patricia
Okay,
and Chris are going to
great.
reach out to Mr.
And
Mills.
then you can bring it back to us. Okay, great.
Okay. Yeah, we need the, yeah. And thank you again, Mr. Mills Pierre. Matt, is your hand up again, or did we not lower you? Okay.
All right, well, we need to wrap this up and talk about what we've heard here today, what's going to go to the top of our list. I'm thinking implicit bias is at the very top. Does anyone else want to add?
Well, implicit bias training, right?
Yeah, implicit bias training, yes.
The board itself, and then how we can institute that around the community. Right?
Yeah, definitely a reading list.
Yes, definitely.
Anyone else want to chime in? Oh, William, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick thought I had. I mean, clearly, since this is such a major issue that really intersects with all of our standing committees, would it make sense to think about, assigning liaisons or at least one person on each committee, kind of responsible? Obviously, everyone's thinking about it, but who's really responsible for making sure equity issues are addressed, in their specific committee?
So that's something that we've talked about since the inception of this, right, Patricia? That we need to look at all of our operations. And in fact, if we look at our statement of purpose, it's in there that we are going to, examine, let's say, or implement new practices and internal operations to create an organizational culture that is viable and sustainable within a world of changing demographics and unremitting racial disparities. So operations and organizational structure. Just as Mr. John Mills Pierre just testified to, we need to look at how we address the public when they come to us. And, our process is equitable. So yeah, within each committee, we have to figure out how to examine that. And we may do a liaison. Many of our committee members, working group members, are on several committees. So they would do that within their committees in which we don't have people that are actually part of the working group. Either Patricia and I or one of the working group members will visit and talk and definitely liaise with those committees. Okay. So yeah, I guess that was the second one, right? Organizational structure and processes. Patricia?
Yes.
Okay.
Valerie, you had your hand up. You wanted to just...
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add that, in listening to John Mills Pierre's, thank you so much for sharing this evening, John. I just kind of see an education piece missing here. To ensure equity, is it a 30-minute webinar that's how to effectively present an SLA case, or how to effectively present a landmarks case that would be two members of the public that maybe traditionally don't come before us and don't have the legal teams that we see all of the time, or architects that we see all the time on landmarks. So just, is there an education piece of whenever you present a case, you'd want to get letters of support, you'd want to reach out, how do we kind of give people that inside hook that to ensure equity that way through that type of information that maybe typical insiders would know. So just going to throw that out there.
I think that's a fantastic idea. I mean, honestly, because I am on SLA, it would be wonderful if everybody came prepared. And the fact that information, there's no, guide to this is how you approach the board at SLA. Here's what you bring with you. Like, because everybody can't just go get a lawyer. One of these, and on SLA, we see the same, 7 lawyers every time. It's the same people and they know it really well. But what if you don't have access? They understand the process really well. What if you don't have access? one of those lawyers and don't even know that you have to. So yeah, I think that that is a fantastic idea to offer the public, you know, guidelines on how to approach the community board. Fantastic. Thank you, Valerie. Akila?
I just wanted to say that I love this idea of building in transparency into all of our committees so that the public and everyone has the ability to be effective when they come before the committees. At the same time, when I'm looking at the implicit bias, you know, work that our community board is looking forward to doing, I think building into that is an understanding that this is not just about having one workshop, but it's about starting a dialogue and starting, you know, a continuous work on implicit bias. And in addition to that, I really like the piece of bringing out the narrative of our community. I think someone brought it up about telling the real stories and the forgotten stories about how our communities were, you know, came to be what they are today. And really, you know, it's an exercise in sort of unpacking our assumption, how we make assumptions. And I'd love to see some of that work move forward and really excavating the narratives of the people of color and minority groups that came to this community and really helped construct the way it is today as well. So I'd love to be involved in that piece of it as well as the implicit bias work.
Thanks, Akila. Katie, you wanted to say something? Katie?
Okay, there I am. I was muted, so maybe I'm muted.
No, you're not. Where are you, Katie?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Good. Thank you. I told you in another meeting I'm going to have a book. Can you hear me? About this time. I wanted to go back to the SLA issue because it's struck me for a long time that we have the borough presidents webinars on land use, landmarks, but we don't have one on the SLA. And for community board members and what we have to think about. And it would be very helpful, following on John Mills Pierre's comments, whom I remember coming before our committee, to have some of that information available to applicants as well, applicants who might not bring lawyers or want to have lawyers. So I think that this is a very granular suggestion, but I think it is something that's doable, and I always like things that can actually be accomplished. And as a historian myself, I'm very interested in the history piece, and it is very important. And there are lots of stories that that we all need to know about what's happened in our neighborhood, for the good and the ill. So I would support that work after, and I love the idea about working with the committees and talking to them, pushing forward this work with a liaison system or something so that everyone's affected and they can see how it bears on the work of the committee as well. It's not, the meta is important, but people have to know what they can do about it. You know, I mean, theory is one thing, but we have to be able to put the theory into practice if we're going to actually change something. And change doesn't, you know, change is hard. So we've had a lot of great ideas tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tricia?
Oh, I see Bob's got his hand up. Bob?
Yeah, hello guys.
Hi.
I've been listening in, and I figured I would do my best to listen rather than talk. But unfortunately, I have to say something about what Mr. Mills said, simply because it involved me and also our committee, and I guess pointing the finger at us for a bias or an incident of bias. What happened this past week or 2 weeks ago, there was, you know, our community board had already weighed in on that application on Sullivan Street. And our community board unanimously found that it was not a good idea to have a liquor license at that particular location. And the main reason, and we also provided a path that I think is very consistent with the hours of operation that Mr. Mills has. But that gentleman and his lawyer did not want to go along with that. And ultimately, we get notices at our community board. So we don't make the decision, we make a recommendation, okay? The decision is made at the State Liquor Authority. And when we, as a community board, make an objection, or there's a difference of opinion as to hours of operation, we will get notice, it will appear as an agenda item at the State Liquor Authority. But the State Liquor Authority does not provide notice to anybody that they're about to have a hearing and make a decision. And so in that situation, I have notified people who have appeared in opposition to an application consistent with the ultimate recommendation of our board. And the reason I do that is because they have no idea. And so I'm giving them notice as best I can. And unfortunately, in this case, I didn't do a very good job of doing so until the last second, because I had so many things going on as the chair of the SLA committee as it is. So, you can disperse, if you don't know the whole story, ultimately, the State Liquor Authority agreed with our community board, okay, on that particular application, okay? So, we don't make the decision, we give recommendations. And our recommendations, I think, are very fair. And on that particular block, it's very important that every business, and every business has similar hours, because when you start giving hours later to some people against other people, that's what causes the outbreak of complaints. And that is why people are so organized on that particular block, which has seen a large growth of liquor licenses on Sullivan Street over the last 15 years. And so, it's a very unique block. It's unfortunate to hear what I heard, but at the same time, I'm listening to what is being said. And
with all due respect, if you were giving fair hours, you gave me 3 hours less than my counterpart.
Look,
Okay,
Mr. Mills,
a white business.
This is going to be about a back.
All right, I just muted both of you, gentlemen. We are going to take this conversation offline. We will discuss with both of you. This is not the time.
Excellent. Mar, I was about to suggest that. First of all, the time is passing, and I think it's something, when something comes up like this, it needs to be among you committee members and the other people who are bringing up either a complaint or concern. And then you guys should reckon with that, as opposed to it, the back and forth. I'm glad you stopped it for now. You guys can do it privately.
Okay.
Yes. So yes, gentlemen, we will both be speaking to you about this issue, and hopefully we can come to some consensus. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Patricia.
We're gonna have notes. We're gonna have notes written and disseminated with our working group members. And our next meeting is July 29th at 6:30. So that's, tomorrow is July already. So that's our upcoming meeting. They can email us, right, Carter? If there's stuff they still want to, if something that was said wasn't said tonight.
And just so everybody's aware, Patricia and I have had extensive discussions, in the past couple of weeks about the board itself. And I think that one of the things people should also know is that there's a lot of offline work that's going to be happening just by virtue of all the board members wanting to work on this and have the discussions. And to some of the points, we're all volunteer members here. Nobody is, is paid to be on the community board. and it's a lot of work. And that's one of the things that we've been discussing amongst the three of us, is getting everybody engaged in ways that we can fundamentally change the underlying institutions that we have direct control over is one of the big things. And a lot of that work happens offline in just discussions, for example, what Valerie brought up, which is a great example. And I think it's something we're going to start to do with each of the committees, is how do each of the committees work? And, you know, is there an opportunity for people to represent themselves? You know, is that a good idea? You know, also, which is another part when they come before us, and understanding how the process works. And that's just something people probably won't see happening, but it's going to start. So just want to put that forward. And everybody can email us, obviously, info@cb2manhattan.org, or directly to the board office, or, you know, different people that you may already have relationships with.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, Donna was asking if we're going to be distributing a reading list. I think that we should. And we, in fact, already have one that we will share this week with the community board. And I don't know, Carter, will we have a page or a portion of the CB2 website? And is that something there?
We had talked about that. That's something Josh is working on, some changes to our website. So we've been waiting to put that on the new website, but we could probably create it and have a link to it on the existing website if you'd like it sooner than that.
Excuse me, Pat, can you share that with me before you send it out to the group?
Sure.
Reading list? Okay.
Sure, sure.
Thanks.
Betty, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just think I presume that Mr. Mills-Pierre is not the only person that has a complaint like this. And I think that it's important that we establish a forum of some sort for people to come with complaints of implicit bias or non-implicit bias about the community board. I think that if we're truly dedicated to equity, we should also be held responsible for past, present, and future discrimination that happens on behalf of our board, and that there should be a procedural way in which we handle those situations.
Okay,
thank you. That's something that we talked about and definitely are working on.
Okay. So it's getting close to the 8 o'clock hour, so I think we'll wrap this meeting up. Thank you all for your—
Thank you.
Sandy, you wanted to say something?
Thank you. Lois Trackle, thanks you.
Our next meeting is the 27th?
It's 7/29, July 29th at 6:30. Is that a Wednesday?
A Wednesday, yes, I'm sorry.
Is it?
Can I also just throw in, just really briefly, there was a whole sort of discussion and that came up around how women are being treated in the board, women who from the community who speak, you know, to address certain issues about the committee happenings, and women who serve on the board who feel enormous disrespect. And I tried to address that. I sent around to Carter and some others how other CB boards sort of have tried to address sort of acceptable behavior and ground rules for how people are treated during the course of the meetings. And in the spirit of intersectionality, I think maybe there's some overlap that we could look at, because that issue was completely dropped.
Actually, it hasn't been dropped at all, Cindy. It's actually in the process. We had to delay it because of COVID, and that's where, remember, I had said to everybody that starting with the training session that we had for the board was the beginning part of that. Then it was creation of the bylaws committee, which has been created. That's meeting next week. And a part of the, under the bylaws committee, was creating the subsection under that of whatever it is that the people would like to have, whether that's a code of conduct or, you know, all the different ways that people have been doing that in other boards. So that's something that we're doing this summer, and that's going to be.
I haven't been apprised of that, and I would have appreciated maybe even to be notified because I clearly have strong feelings about that, as you know.
Right. Well, that's something that Susan is chairing that committee. And what I think, not that it's part of this committee, but it's part of that work was going to be creating a separate task force to come up with a code of conduct from board members.
Okay.
So it's because of COVID, as you know, we just ended up having to delay that whole sequence of events that I had outlined, I think in January. But it's still happening right now, and it's going to be happening through the summer.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. We're definitely going to have a, discussion about guidelines for etiquette or a code of conduct specifically for the EWG. So we'll share that when that's ready.
Anthony, is this a quick,
Anthony?
Oh, just pointing out, I dropped the link in the chat for board members who didn't see. It's an interesting article on Time Magazine, 21 Lessons from America's Worst Moments. That's something you guys can read over the long weekend and maybe just learn about America's history and also discuss it with the rest of your family and friends.
Okay, thank you.
Very much.
Mar and Pat, very good. This has been very fruitful. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
You want to wrap it up?
No, go ahead, Mar.
No, you wrap it up. I'm muting.
All right, thank you everyone for sharing your ideas. We will definitely be doing some work behind the scenes. We're reaching out to Mr. John Mills Pierre. And our next meeting, as you know, is Wednesday, July the 29th at 6:30. And we are reachable by email. And we'll share those reading lists when we have that ready. We'll share that. We'll drop that on the website. Thank you all. Have a good
Patricia,
night.
you need a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Oh, we need a
Bye.
motion. I'm sorry, what was that, Matt?
You need a motion to adjourn.
I need a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Do we, Carter, as a working group? You're muted.
Not really, not a working group.
Come on, Dr. Smith, you got to give me a little bit of love on
I'm
this.
not trying to take anything, but it doesn't, it's not the rules of order here. You can do it though. It's not necessary. You can do it.
Make that motion, Matt. Make it.
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn. Take care.
All right, have a wonderful night, all.
Be safe. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night.